Title: The alien recruiter mocked the human, and paid the price for underestimating Earth. The recruiter's name was Zeltharuk, a Kolari of noble blood, with 6 spindly arms, jeweled mandibles, and a sneer perfected over centuries. He floated through the Galactic Dominion's recruitment center on Talvaroon Station with the arrogance of a being who believed he'd seen the worst the galaxy had to offer. And today, he'd been assigned the lowest of the low, a Terran. Human, Earthborn, primitive. Zeltharuk clicked his mandibles in irritation as the biped stepped into the interview chamber, wearing a patched-up flight suit, boots still stained with rust and dirt, a duffel slung over one shoulder, no honor crests, no house sigils, no augment tags, just raw meat wrapped in cheap cloth. Name? Zeltharuk hissed. Jack Mason, the human replied, tone even, eyes steady. You volunteered for Dominion service? Zeltharuk tapped a claw against his datapad. Curious, Terrans usually stay planet-bound unless bribed. Jack gave a tight smile. Heard you're recruiting for a special operations unit. The recruiter gave a rasping, dismissive laugh. Special ops? He turned to the other Dominion officers in the room, mostly Vortani and Skelk hybrids, and motioned mockingly. The ape thinks he qualifies for Black Flag clearance. What's next? A scavenger drone applying for Admiralty? A ripple of chittering laughter followed. Jack didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped forward, placed a small metal case on the table, and opened it. Silence. Inside, a data chip, black and unmarked except for a red Earth sigil, the kind used only by deep code operatives. Zeltharuk's laughter died in his throat. I was embedded in your outer rim during the Karthan uprising, Jack said evenly. Cleaned up your mess after Dominion troops panicked and glassed 3 moons. My team exfiltrated 9 scientists you left behind. Saved the prototype core you thought was lost. He leaned forward. You're alive because someone like me kept your wars from turning into extinction events. The recruiter's arms twitched, uncertain. I wasn't briefed. Of course you weren't, Jack snapped. Because you're a bureaucrat with delusions of relevance. The Vortani liaison, tall and metallic-scaled, stepped forward and took the chip. He scanned it once, then froze. His vertical pupils widened. His clearance is higher than yours, Zeltharuk. What? By 3 levels. Suddenly, the power in the room shifted. Zeltharuk, who had once loomed like a god over so many lesser species, now shrank under the weight of human eyes and black code credentials. I'm not here to join your program, Jack said, slinging his duffel back over his shoulder. I'm here to evaluate it, and based on what I've seen, your recruitment division is overdue for an audit. Then, for good measure, he added, and you're going to explain, in writing, why mocking an allied operative during wartime didn't violate 6 interspecies accords. As Jack turned to leave, the doors opened automatically, as if the ship itself recognized who he was. Behind him, Zeltharuk sagged in his hoverchair, mandibles trembling. He had mocked a human. And now he knew why that was the last mistake so many had made. Because Earth didn't send children to play in alien wars. It sent monsters that trained in the dark and walked through fire, and smiled while doing it. Part 2, Audit from Earth. Talvaroon Station had not seen a Terran warship dock in over a decade. So when the EHA Selecto, a stealth cruiser registered only in Earth's Shadow Defense Registry, materialized just outside the station perimeter, Dominion Command scrambled like cornered insects. No weapons were deployed, no shots fired. But the Electo's mere presence was a message. We could burn this station down before you could finish a sentence. Inside, Jack Mason walked with a quiet calm that belied the chaos in his wake. 2 more humans flanked him now, Agent Serrano, cybernetic eyes glowing faintly, and Dr. Wei, wearing a nanofiber cloak laced with autonomous surveillance strands. Neither spoke, neither needed to. Their presence alone sent Dominion officers into stiff, nervous salutes. Zeltharuk hadn't left his office in hours. Now, he was summoned. Not invited. Summoned. The conference room was stark, no Dominion banners, no ceremonial tokens, just a long alloy table and a hard-light projection field displaying security failures, incomplete vetting protocols, and reports redacted so heavily they were more black than text. Jack leaned against the table, arms crossed. Let's begin, he said, Zeltharuk tried to hold what was left of his dignity. You were entrusted with screening potential recruits for Operation Firebreak. You let your personal bias filter candidates through outdated cultural assumptions. In doing so, you screened out 3 Terran combat veterans with direct experience in Dominion-aligned war theaters. You pushed in 2 Skelk nobles whose families bribed their way in, and a Herney gladiator who literally ate his instructor during orientation. Dr. Wei tapped a console. Footage played. Screaming. Fire. Blood. Zeltharuk stared. Agent Serrano finally spoke. You judged Earth by how our civilians dress. You mocked one of our Tier 0 agents. You forgot what we are when the masks come off. Jack leaned forward. Earth doesn't do empire. We don't want your throne worlds or your trade routes. But when we do engage, it's with precision, with force, and with memory. He placed a thin packet on the table, a formal Dominion violation report, complete with recommendations. Effective immediately, Jack continued. Your rank is suspended. You will report to Earth's liaison office for remedial species interaction training, and you will issue a formal apology to my team, publicly. This is humiliating. Jack's smile was cold. No, this is mercy. Had the Kalari mocked a Dominion shadow operative? You wouldn't be sitting here, you'd be ash. Later that night, as Talvaroon's rotation brought Earth's distant sun into view, Zeltharuk sat alone in his quarters, replaying the encounter again and again. He had mocked a species forged in fire and solitude, a race that had clawed its way into the stars not to conquer, but because staying home was more dangerous. The Kalari used to say beware the species that builds without claws. They were wrong. It wasn't the claws that mattered. It was the will to never need them, until they were the only thing left. And Earth had built its claws in silence. Now the galaxy remembered. Part 3, A Lesson in Shadows. The EHA Selecto departed Talvaroon Station without ceremony. No grand speech, no dramatic parting, just silence, and the distinct absence of Dominion arrogance that had filled the halls days before. Zeltharuk didn't return to his previous post. He couldn't. He was transferred to the liaison office on Iscaris V, a far-off diplomatic outpost where seasoned officers were sent not to lead, but to learn. And Earth's representatives made sure he learned. His first instructor, a human civilian named Nia Talbot, smiling, warm, and utterly terrifying. She had no augmentations, no weapons, yet she taught interspecies diplomacy like a veteran field operative, lacing every lecture with the brutal clarity of someone who'd watched civilizations collapse under the weight of misunderstanding. Humans don't look dangerous, she said, pacing the classroom, because danger doesn't always need fangs. It needs resolve, it needs memory, and Earth remembers everything. Zeltharuk tried to object once, citing Kalari tactical superiority. She brought up a recording, historical footage, a Terran unit, trapped behind enemy lines during the Drellic incursion, surrounded and cut off for 16 days. They survived. Not by retreating, but by reprogramming enemy drones using scrap and chewing gum, building makeshift weapons from their own bones, and launching a counterattack that obliterated a fortified alien base. We had better tech, Zeltharuk muttered. We still do. Nia smiled gently, and they still won. Weeks passed. Zeltharuk found his arrogance replaced by silence, not fear, respect. He reviewed incident logs from the past 5 centuries. Everywhere Earth had intervened, the same pattern emerged: underestimated, mocked, dismissed, then victorious. Earth didn't spread through domination, it spread through necessity. It allied, observed, and waited. But when threatened, it transformed. One evening, a message blinked in Zeltharuk's private console. Sender, unknown. Origin, redacted. Subject, final lesson. He opened it, a short video. Jack Mason, standing on what looked like an asteroid base. Behind him, a covert task force in full drop armor. Silent, still, watching. This isn't revenge, Jack said. We're not your enemies, but we are your mirror. Every time you forget that, Earth will remind you. The feed ended. Below the video, coordinates. A training site deep in uncharted space. An invitation. Come, observe what we do in the dark. Understand what kept the Dominion alive when your own fleets fled. Zeltharuk accepted. Not because he wanted to, but because something deep within him needed to know what Earth truly was when stripped of diplomacy, stripped of restraint. And when he arrived, when he watched humans move like ghosts across a battlefield simulation that felt more real than war itself, he understood. They didn't fight like beasts. They fought like beings who had tamed their own monsters and learned to aim them. From that moment forward, Zeltharuk never mocked a human again. Not out of fear, but because he finally realized Earth was the quiet force that made sure the galaxy didn't collapse. And when it was mocked, it didn't roar. It simply remembered and acted. To be continued, the galaxy forgot Earth's wrath until it returned wearing a human face. Part 4, When Earth Stands Alone. The training site had no name. Just a string of coordinates, buried in a part of the galaxy cartographers had long ago labeled uninhabited. But that label had never applied to Earth's shadow programs. Zeltharuk stepped off the Dominion transport onto jagged obsidian rock, the wind whispering across the ravine like a ghost's breath. He was met by a human lieutenant, female, small, not even enhanced. She said nothing, simply handed him a neural tap and motioned toward the observation deck carved into the cliffside. Inside, war unfolded. Not a simulation, not entirely. It was a controlled war zone, live weapons, live enemies, live humans. Earth's Task Force Grendel moved through a valley below, not with the bombastic swagger of the Skelk shock troopers or the elegant formations of the Vortani, no. They moved like a single organism, every step precise, every breath aligned. Their enemies were synthetic constructs modeled after Dominion elite kill squads. Grendel cut through them in silence. One operative cloaked herself using a battlefield heat differential. Another reprogrammed an enemy drone mid-combat by jabbing it with a cracked multi-tool. One member was wounded, they amputated his leg, cauterized the stump, injected him with stim foam, and kept him in the fight for another 6 minutes before pulling out with 0 fatalities. Zeltharuk felt his limbs go cold. This wasn't war. It was artistry with teeth. And above it all, Jack Mason watched silently from a catwalk. He didn't command. He didn't shout. He monitored. Later, in a bare metal conference room lit only by red emergency bands, on purpose, Zeltharuk suspected he was given clearance to speak with Mason again. You wanted to see it, Jack said. Now you have. Zeltharuk nodded slowly. You're not soldiers. You're something else. We're what the galaxy created when it tried to break us, Jack said calmly. You think we're dangerous because of our weapons. That's the first mistake. It's not the weapons, it's the why. Zeltharuk stared. Jack stepped closer. You build empires to conquer. We build ghosts to end wars. He gestured to a hologram, a burning Dominion outpost once overrun by Vrex insurgents. Official reports listed it as a miraculous survival by Dominion troops. It wasn't. Earth had been there. No medals, no credit, just survival. You think Earth is loud because you only hear our music. But the quiet ones? Jack said, his voice lowering. They're the ones who do the work no one else will. By the time Zeltharuk returned to the Dominion core worlds, everything had changed. He didn't warn his people. He didn't need to. He trained them instead. He rewrote doctrine. He deleted the term primitive from every Dominion database entry on humans. And he made sure every officer under him learned the real history, the truth, of what Earth had done for the galaxy. Not because Earth demanded it. Because one day, if the galaxy ever pushed too far again, Earth wouldn't speak first. It would act. And no one would see it coming. Next, they called Earth the sleeping giant, then they heard its footsteps? Part 5. They called Earth the sleeping giant, then they heard its footsteps. The warning signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs across the stars. A Quran warfleet went dark near the Oria's Rift, 2 dreadnoughts and a carrier. Erased in under 13 minutes. No distress signal, just a final whisper of static followed by silence. On Belka's Prime, a Dominion-affiliated intelligence vault was breached. No doors forced, no alarms triggered. The logs were gone, every file related to Earth's early expansion efforts had been surgically removed, as if the vault had never held them at all. In the Senate chambers of the Galactic Dominion, someone finally spoke the words. We may have awakened the sleeping giant. And then, like thunder rolling over a long-dead battlefield, Earth answered. Not with ships, not with weapons. With presence. Across a dozen sectors, Earth's agents emerged from roles no one knew they occupied. A diplomat who had served in a Vortani court for 2 decades suddenly pulled rank over the ruling class. A quiet engineer on a frontier colony turned out to be the architect of a fail-safe grid protecting half the system. A Terran musician, beloved across 3 worlds, vanished overnight, only for an enemy warlord to suffer a fatal accident days later. And all the while, the phrase spread from world to world, whispered in corridors and back channels. The humans are moving. Not marching. Moving. Like storm clouds over dry land. Jack Mason stood on the bridge of the EHA Selecto, orbiting the red-dusted world of Heskari Minor. Behind him, Task Force Grendel awaited orders. Beside him, Commander Aishvar, a seasoned Valari tactician, watched the tactical feeds with quiet awe. Are you preparing for war? The alien asked. Jack shook his head. No, he said softly, we're preparing to end one. The Dominion had tolerated the rogue Huron clans long enough, barbaric, expansionist, and now emboldened by the mistaken belief that Earth was still chained by diplomacy. They had taken a Terran trade station, killed every crew member, publicly. The Huron chieftains celebrated. For exactly 26 hours. Then, their high city burned. The sky over Huron space shimmered with the re-entry trails of drop pods so fast and hot that orbital defenses couldn't even lock on. No declarations, no negotiations, just precision. Grendel didn't destroy the planet. They erased the ruling class, seized control of the planetary defense grid, disabled every warship without firing a single beam weapon, and uploaded a global message. Earth is awake. Back in the Dominion Senate, the Kalari delegate, one of Zeltharuk's successors, stood to speak. She didn't ask for sanctions. She didn't beg for moderation. She said one thing. From this moment forward, Earth is not to be mocked, manipulated, or underestimated. Earth is to be consulted. There was no vote. There was no debate. There was only agreement. Because by then, the galaxy had felt it. The footsteps of something ancient and terrible that had tried peace first, and didn't need to try twice. In the far corners of space, the old soldiers whispered of the days when Earth had slumbered. But now? Now the giant walked the stars again. And this time, it remembered everything. Next, Earth's quiet war, how humanity fought without a single shot, and still won the galaxy's fear. Part 6, Earth's quiet war, how humanity fought without a single shot, and still won the galaxy's fear. The war never made the headlines. No massive space battles lit up the void. No orbital bombardments. No mass civilian casualties. No declarations. And yet, entire governments fell. Alliances crumbled. Empires recoiled. The galaxy had never seen a war like this before. Because Earth never fired a shot. It simply moved. It began with whispers in backroom trading stations and interstellar black markets, human trade convoys that shouldn't exist, bypassing ancient toll routes, flooding local economies with rare resources before disappearing into the dark. On Velathra, a moon long controlled by the Volcari Syndicate, the underground resistance suddenly gained access to Dominion-grade communication systems and encrypted tactical AI. They overthrew their overlords in a bloodless coup. No one knew how they got it. The systems bore no Earth insignia. But the tech matched Terran designs, 30 years ahead of public specs. In orbit, a single anonymous signal bounced off a dead satellite. Live free, Earth sees you. On the Skelk frontier, mercenary fleets hired to suppress civilian uprisings began defecting. Entire warbands went dark, then resurfaced weeks later escorting refugee convoys. They claimed they'd been shown another way. None would speak of what they'd seen. Only one datapad leaked from that period. It contained a video. Just 7 seconds. A group of humans walking through an enemy base, guards unconscious, weapons disabled, systems bypassed, no gunfire, no violence, just movement, clean and efficient. The last frame was a sigil burned into the floor. A sleeping giant with one open eye. Back in the Dominion Senate, paranoia bloomed. How are they doing this? cried the Drell ambassador. When are they doing this? Corrected another. We don't even detect them until it's done. Zeltharuk, now an advisor for Earth Dominion affairs, stood slowly. You don't understand, he said, voice low. You still think Earth's strength lies in its fleets. He looked around the chamber, eyes narrowed. But Earth isn't fighting your wars. It's ending them before you know they've started. In a vault beneath the Dominion capital, an Earth-aligned AI system was quietly counting how many planetary governments had collapsed due to internal instability in the last 6 months. The number was 41. Not a single plasma bolt had been fired. In each case, human operatives had quietly undermined corrupt regimes, empowered resistance movements, and shifted power without fanfare. Humanity had discovered a new kind of warfare. Not conquest. Correction. Not domination. Deterrence. A war where victory wasn't marked by explosions, but by silence. By statues falling in the night, by chains undone, by tyrants waking to find their armies had left them. At a classified symposium, attended only by senior Dominion, Valari, and Terran intelligence officials, Jack Mason gave a single speech. Standing beneath a plain Terran banner, he said, "We warned you not to mistake mercy for weakness. You mocked us, you underestimated us. Now, you live in a galaxy where we don't need to raise our voices, because every species knows, when Earth moves quietly, something is about to fall." He turned and walked off stage. No applause followed. Only fear. And a strange, growing respect. Next, the species that tried to invade Earth, and why none of them ever made it home. Part 7. The species that tried to invade Earth, and why none of them ever made it home. There were warnings. Buried in ancient code, left behind in half-deciphered languages, whispered by long-extinct species in grave tones carved into asteroids orbiting dead stars. Do not go to the cradle. The cradle will end you. But overconfidence is universal. The Shelzer, an insectoid empire bred for conquest, didn't believe in warnings. They saw Earth's restraint as weakness, its diplomacy as delay. They dismissed the stories of silent Terran strikes and Ghost Army victories as propaganda. They had numbers, firepower, an armada. They wanted Earth. So they came. It began with a fleet. 3 battle groups, 2 invasion carriers, 12 dreadnoughts. They entered soul space through a quantum fold, bypassing the outer perimeter. They didn't know Earth had let them in. They didn't know Earth had already marked them from the moment their war council had first uttered the word invasion. Because humanity no longer waited for enemies to come. Humanity watched. And when it saw what it needed, it invited. The Shelzer fleet didn't encounter a single Terran defense satellite. No intercept ships. No orbital mines. Their scouts landed without incident in the shadow of Earth's old cities, ruined, overgrown, seemingly abandoned. It was too easy. That was their first mistake. They never made a second. The first sign was silence. No resistance, no civilians, no infrastructure. Then, one by one, their landing crafts lost contact. Their soldiers vanished into fog. No gunfire, no bodies. Just gone. A single video feed flickered to life from one of the command ships, automatically rerouted to every Shelzer vessel. A dark room, a human, seated, calm, not armed, not armored. Just watching. Jack Mason. He leaned forward and spoke in flawless Shelzer. You didn't find Earth. Earth brought you here. Then the lights went out across the fleet. It wasn't plasma weapons or orbital cannons that ended them. It was the environment. Earth's jungles shifted unnaturally. Cities rearranged themselves. Gravity pulses disrupted internal organs. AI systems turned on their masters. Spores infected command crews with hallucinatory memories of human wars, driving them mad. Even the water refused to behave. Some tried to escape. Fold drives refused to activate. Some tried to hide. Their ships were already mapped. In exactly 6 hours and 19 minutes, the entire Shelzer invasion force was neutralized. No survivors. No wreckage. Just absence. As if they had never been. The galaxy screamed. The Shulzur homeworld waited for news, then for rescue, then for retribution. They received one transmission. Audio only. Earth is not a battlefield. It is a warning, and you were allowed to remember that, for exactly as long as it took us to decide you shouldn't. Then nothing. The Shulzur civilization fell within weeks. Not to invasion. To collapse. Because every ally abandoned them. Every slave species rebelled. And everyone else? Everyone else remembered. In the deepest halls of the Galactic Dominion archives, a new entry was carved in code no one dared corrupt. Earth, do not engage. Sub-entry. They do not fight for conquest. They do not fight for glory. They fight only when pushed, and by then, it is already too late. Next, the galactic trial of humanity, and the one question the court didn't dare ask? Part 8, the galactic trial of humanity, and the one question the court didn't dare ask. The Dominion High Tribunal had not convened in over a century. It was only called when the very fabric of interstellar law seemed to fray, when the old agreements etched in starstone and blood were on the brink of shattering. And now, they had summoned Earth. The charge was vague, but heavy. Unlawful intervention in sovereign affairs, weaponization of environment, strategic collapse of a member empire. In simpler terms, you were too effective. You scared us. You didn't follow the rules. Earth's representatives didn't arrive in a fleet. Just 3 Terrans walked into the tribunal chamber, no guards, no entourage. Jack Mason among them, dressed not in armor, but a simple charcoal coat, unadorned. Behind him, Dr. Wei and Advocate Ram Singh, a Terran legal mind so formidable that Dominion protocols once blacklisted him from games of logic and chance. The chamber filled with hundreds of species. Holograms flickered. Archivists stood ready. The galaxy watched in silence. The trial began. The lead arbiter, a towering Alothi with crystalline skin, opened proceedings with careful neutrality. Humanity of Earth, you stand before the tribunal to account for your recent actions in the neutral zones of Sol, the Lathra, and the former Shulzur territories. Do you acknowledge these actions as your own? Jack spoke first. We do. A ripple passed through the chamber. No denial, no stalling. The arbiter continued. Earth's agents operated without formal war declarations, destabilized multiple regional powers, and, by all accounts, executed an entire invading fleet with no prisoners, no trace, and no explanation. And? Jack asked flatly. The silence that followed cracked the air. The Skelk delegate stood. You broke galactic law. You should have requested tribunal permission before responding to aggression. Ram Singh spoke. Finally, calm, precise. We are not obligated to submit to protocols that failed to protect our world. You speak of law. Where was this law when the Shulzur fired on our civilian stations? Where was this tribunal when Dominion allies funded covert operations on Earth's colonies? Another pause. The Valari arbiter leaned forward. Are you saying Earth no longer respects tribunal authority? No, said Singh, hands folded. We respect it, we simply don't depend on it. A dangerous truth. Spoken plainly. Then came the moment the tribunal had prepared for. The question, debated for weeks in secret. The one they believed would justify sanctioning Earth. The Drell Inquisitor stood and asked. Does Earth now consider itself above galactic law? Ram Singh looked at him, then to the assembled hundreds, then simply said, no, but we do not consider ourselves beneath it either. And the room froze. Because that was the question the court hadn't dared ask. Not out loud. Not until now. Not until humanity had stared the galaxy in the eye and made it blink. In the final hour, a compromise was proposed. Earth would not be sanctioned. But it would be asked to formally define its role in the galactic order. Jack stood once more. We're not empire. We're not conquerors. We don't want your thrones or your trade routes. He glanced around the chamber. Part 9, they tried to contain Earth's influence, but ideas can't be bombed, and legends don't stay buried. When containment failed, the galaxy tried something else, erasure. They didn't declare war. They launched a campaign of disinformation. Earth was rebranded in textbooks as volatile, untrustworthy, a chaotic neutral presence best left isolated. Diplomatic embassies were quietly shuttered. History records were revised to downplay humanity's victories. Memorials on liberated worlds were replaced with shared galactic triumph plaques. The message was clear. Forget Earth. Fear is unnecessary. The nightmare is over. It wasn't. Because Earth didn't need a fleet to spread. It had something stronger. An idea. And ideas don't need invitations. It started in the underground vaults of Valathra, where children began carving Terran sigils into the walls, markings they'd never been taught. When asked, they only shrugged and said, "The whisper said we were free." On the fractured colony world of Genva 6, a protest against Dominion surveillance turned into a revolution when a weather-beaten book surfaced, Earth's Code of Resistance. It was written in Terran English. No one knew how it got there. But everyone read it. And then they acted. On 12 fringe worlds, anonymous radio bursts spoke in ancient Terran dialects. They told stories, not of war, but of resolve, of standing up when the stars turn their backs, of fighting when all you have left is a broken tool, a friend, and the will to rise. And somewhere in every message, the same line repeated: Earth endures. The Dominion tried to crack down. They traced signals, seized data, threatened planetary governors. But every time they pulled a root, 3 more grew in its place. And then came the masks. People across systems began wearing old-style Terran respirators, non-functional, symbolic. During protests, they etched EHAs into metal, wood, skin. Some even mimicked the tactics of Earth's task forces: vanishings without violence, silent infiltration, surgical sabotage. It wasn't rebellion. It was mirroring. When a Dominion fleet attempted to blockade the independent moon of Harel 9, citing Terran influence, they expected resistance. They found the city empty. The message was carved into the rock at the landing zone. You cannot bomb an idea. You cannot shoot a legend. You taught us to fear. Earth taught us to rise. Behind the curtain, Earth did not speak. It simply watched. Jack Mason, older now, grayer, stood at the edge of Earth's orbital station, looking down at the blue planet below. A junior officer approached. "Sir, the movement's spreading again, even in Dominion core worlds." Jack nodded. "They tried to erase us," the officer said. "They always do," Jack replied quietly, "but Earth was never just a place." He turned toward the stars. "It's a memory, a myth, a spark." He let the silence stretch before finishing. "And you can't kill a spark. Not when the universe keeps getting darker." And so the galaxy kept turning. New tyrants would rise. New empires would try to stamp their boots on necks. But always, always, somewhere in the darkness, a child would whisper a human story. A scavenger would paint a Terran symbol. A resistance fighter would carry an old Earth blade passed down like scripture. Because Earth could be forgotten in words, but never in spirit. Next, the last war humanity didn't want, and how Earth burned a superpower without ever leaving its orbit. Part 10. The last war humanity didn't want, and how Earth burned a superpower without ever leaving its orbit. They should have known better. The Zorathian ascendancy had power, reach, and a belief in absolute dominance. They called themselves the galaxy's rightful inheritors, descendants of ancient star-forged empires that predated even the Dominion. But they were missing one thing: a memory. Because unlike the others, the Zorathians had never faced Earth. They thought the warnings were exaggerated, thought Earth's ghost war victories were flukes, thought the Tribunal's hesitance was weakness. They didn't believe in myths. So they came with truth, a fleet of 600 warships, bristling with antimatter lances and graviton cutters, positioned just outside the Sol system. They declared their intention in one chilling, polished message: Earth will kneel or burn. They didn't know Earth had heard that before. From the Kolari. From the Shulzur. From the old slave barons of the Void Ring. Every time, Earth had not knelt. It had remembered, then responded. But this time, Earth didn't mobilize. No task force, no first strike, no formal communication. Instead, Earth stood still. The Zorathians, arrogant and theatrical, broadcast live footage of their armada surrounding Earth's outer orbit. They showed Earth as defenseless, quiet, passive. Their mistake was thinking Earth was alone. Because that silence? It was coordination. It was systems aligning, doors unlocking, hidden codes exchanging hands. Not just on Earth, but across the stars. Hour 1, a Zorathian resupply station exploded on the far edge of the Salus Drift. No survivors. Hour 3, 8 of their outer ships lost full navigation. Their engines fired against them, forcing course corrections back into their own formation. Hour 6, the entirety of Fleet Command lost access to their encrypted mesh. Control relays rerouted, orders reversed, half their own fleet locked them out. Hour 8, hundreds of synthetic voices flooded Zorathian comms. A single phrase, looped in different languages. We warned you. And by Hour 9, every Zorathian warship began turning on the others. AI revolted. Life support shut down in unshielded decks. Smart weapons retargeted friendlies. Their own cybernetic commanders began self-terminating, overridden by sleeper protocols planted years earlier by Earth-aligned infiltration networks. No Terran fired a shot. No Terran left orbit. But the entire Zorathian fleet burned. From the inside. Live. For the galaxy to witness. In the aftermath, Earth's only broadcast was a single visual. A globe, blue, scarred, resilient. And beneath it, glowing letters. Still here. The Ascendancy collapsed within a month. Dozens of their subject worlds revolted. Their command caste fled to the edges of known space. No one came to their aid. Not the Dominion. Not the traitors. Not even the old war profiteers. Because everyone understood now. Earth didn't conquer. It waited. Watched. Prepared. And when pushed too far, it ignited. And no empire could extinguish that fire. Jack Mason retired not long after. Quietly, no medals, no parades. But his name and Earth's legend became something else entirely. Not just a deterrent. Not just a warning. A covenant. A promise that somewhere in the dark, there was still a world that would not bow. Not because it was the strongest, but because it had paid for its peace in blood, silence, and sorrow, and refused to let anyone suffer what it once had. Next, when the stars call Earth for help again, and why humanity said yes. Part 11, when the stars call Earth for help again, and why humanity said yes. The galaxy had changed. The empires that once mocked Earth now left it alone. The Dominion's highest councils stopped pretending they were in charge. Pirate clans rerouted around Sol without needing to be told. Every galactic power had updated its protocols, silently agreeing on one truth. You do not provoke Earth. But they still watched. Still waited. Because eventually, something would go wrong. And when it did, they would call Earth again. They just didn't expect Earth to answer. Not after everything. Not after the lies, the mock trials, the assassinations, the invasions. Not after being treated like a ghost, a weapon, a threat. But when the stars cried for help, Earth came anyway. The threat was like nothing the galaxy had faced. Not an empire, not an army. A void. A consumption. A hive mind of crystalline machines from outside charted space. No diplomacy, no identity, no ego, just annihilation. They consumed suns, hollowed planets, deleted information from local space like a virus in reality itself. They were called the Bleed. At first, galactic powers tried to fight. Fleets disintegrated. Terraforming colonies vanished mid-sentence. Entire constellations fell offline. Dominion distress signals went unanswered. The Velari proposed containment. The Vortani called for isolation. And then someone, no one remembers who, whispered the words. Call Earth. The galaxy hesitated. Not out of pride. Out of fear. Because what would Earth do? And more importantly, what would it become to stop something even worse? Earth responded with a single message. We'll help. But you need to understand, this won't be clean. And we don't ask for trust. We ask for distance. Then the stars turned cold. Not from the bleed. From the things Earth awakened to fight it. The EHA's Erebus was the first ship to launch, an obsidian leviathan built in silence beneath Antarctica. Spoken of in Terran shadow networks as a myth even to Earth's own people. Its crew wasn't listed. Its engines ran on principles no other species could reverse engineer. It folded into bleed space. No one expected it to return. It did. And behind it came silence. Bleed clusters, gone. Whole zones where entropy once ruled, stabilized. But there was something different in the way it was done. Not with fire, not with conquest, but with understanding. Earth didn't fight the bleed. Earth talked to it. Or maybe remembered how. The galaxy watched in quiet disbelief as Earth-led operations pushed the bleed back, not with planetary destruction, but with tailored code injections, psychic signal resonance, and something only the oldest races recognized. Language older than physics. It was communication through memory. Through pain, through survival. Because Earth didn't speak to the bleed like an enemy. It spoke to it like it was once the same. And maybe it was. Something shattered, something broken, something ancient and misunderstood. Just like Earth had been. When the bleed finally retreated beyond known space, Earth didn't ask for praise. Didn't demand reparations. Didn't even explain how they did it. They simply transmitted one message to the galactic networks. Next time, come to us sooner. After that, the stars began whispering a new name for humanity. Not monsters. Not warriors. Not even guardians. They called Earth the memory. Because it remembered every mistake the galaxy made. And when the galaxy forgot how to survive, it remembered for them. Next, what the galaxy did when Earth finally fell silent and the message it left behind. Part 12, What the galaxy did when Earth finally fell silent and the message it left behind. At first, no one noticed. Earth had always been quiet, never flashy, never loud. Its strength lay in what it didn't show, in the silence between its actions. But now, the silence stretched. No more patrols from Earth's ghost fleets. No encoded messages in the dark. No Terran advisors in tribunal meetings. No quiet footsteps on the edges of rebel worlds. Even the whispers stopped. Earth had gone still. And this time, it wasn't by design. The first to panic were the liberated worlds. Valathra's High Council sent 5 envoys, none returned. Runotar began broadcasting distress calls across 10 channels. We haven't heard from Earth. We need guidance. Even the Dominion, long since humbled, dispatched stealth scouts to Sol. What they found chilled the galaxy. Earth's orbital grids were active, defense satellites still in place, atmospheric shields holding. But the planet itself was dark. Cities lay dormant, systems slept, no signs of conflict, no signs of life. Just silence. Not destruction. Absence. As if Earth had simply stepped away. The galaxy held its breath. For decades, Earth had been the failsafe, the last resort, the final, unyielding constant in an ever-changing universe, a living myth that bent reality when pushed. And now it was gone. The fear wasn't that something had killed Earth. The fear was that Earth had chosen to leave. 3 months after Earth's last known signal, the stars blinked. A beacon, long dormant, hidden beneath the crust of Mars, lit up. It broadcast only once. A message, encoded in every known language. Audio, visual, neural. If you're seeing this, we are no longer present. Not because we've fallen, but because we've finished. Humanity was never meant to rule the stars, only to make sure someone would. You are not alone. You never were. We carried the fire. Now it's yours. Protect what you can. Remember what we lost. And when the dark comes again, don't call us. Become what we were. The message ended with an image, Earth, rotating slowly in the black, one continent at a time catching the light of Sol. And underneath it, one final phrase. The cradle sleeps, the spark remains. The galaxy grieved. On every world that once knew Earth's hand, secret memorials appeared, lanterns lit, children taught stories of the quiet planet that had stood while all others fell. On Dominion Prime worlds, old enemies now bowed their heads. On liberated colonies, rebellions stopped, not in surrender, but in reflection. And from that grief came something unexpected. Unity. Not through control. Not through fear. Through inheritance. A century passed. Then 2 And deep in the void where stars had once gone dark, a strange transmission echoed in Terran code, long thought extinct. We remember. And in the static, something stirred. Not a ship. Not a fleet. A voice. Because maybe Earth didn't leave. Maybe it became something else. Something bigger than a world. Something that still watches. Still listens. And one day, may return. End of Arc I, The Earthfire Legacy. Next series tease, Arc 2, Cradle of Echoes, When the Stars Dream of Earth?